I present you today a once beautiful scene of a once upon a time fairy tale fantasy. Yet sadly, upon closer inspection we find the fairy tale has died. Is still unknown. Homicide or not, I simply cannot condone. Really, your guess is as good as mine. Though suicide does strike a spark in the heart of our tale, and the average teenage male doesn't have a lot of pressures these days. But let's pretend we can transcend reality and think out this mystery. Aha! A lead already. Hold that camera steady as we take a look. And suspect A, from her downtrodden eyes, I suspect, has had a horrible time hiding a certain lie. Excuse me, Mrs.
Allison Alice Allsworth?
Yes, of course. If that is your real name, what was your relation with our dear fairy tale lying over there?
Fairy tale. Such a handsome male. We were lovers in a long ago age, though it feels as if it was just yesterday.
Ah, I see. An old romance. Tell us, Miss Allison Alice Allsworth, what became of you and my dear dead friend, Fairy Tale?
He was always so sweet, but really, he just couldn't meet my needs of the week. And before it even started, I had a hunch. He wouldn't last a moment longer than a month. He really was so dear, where he'd always come so near. But you see, I was a ballroom dancer, and he, such a silly romancer. He'd always offer me the oddest things. At any moment, I thought he'd present me with a ring. But instead, he just wanted to be my boob and shine my shoes, which I gladly accepted. But it got to be quite a chore, him being such a bore and clinging and always ringing. And had he just given me space? For Fairy Tale really was quite a handsome male. But he just pushed and always seemed to doubt he'd ever figure me out, and I just couldn't handle anymore.
So you killed him?
No! How could you say such a thing? I didn't kill him. I dumped him.
I see. Maybe those downtrodden eyes do indeed hide a certain lie. But I suppose maybe not of the murdering kind. I swear I'll find the key to this mystery. You there! Guilt lays a heavy burden and is plain to see. You may suspect me the culprit in this fairy tale felony.
Are you accusing me?
Yes, I am. Suspect B.
I admit me and Fairy Tale have had rough times of late, but there was never a date that I would commit this act of hate. In fact, if I had to decide, I would claim it was suicide.
And why do you say that?
Well, if I may add, Fairy Tale was really quite mad. He'd ramble on about conquering time and finding a rhyme for the word orange, which we all know is impossible to rhyme with at all. I'd offer to call a therapist, but you know how that can get. It was actually really quite annoying how he'd always seem to want to talk to me about flying really being falling, but without the flapping of the wings. And from his mouth, all of these crazy, crazy things just poured. And how could I do anything but ignore?
And now, look where he lies.
Well, everyone dies. And if I may add, Fairy Tale was really quite mad. So perhaps he's in a better place than he was yesterday. Maybe if I had listened, he'd still be here today. But who am I to question his fate?
Who are you, suspect B? I imagine we shall see if your tale rings out in this mystery, for it doesn't always take a knife to slash up little strife and blood from a soul shines just as bold as blood from an artery found the hand of the culprit. In this fairy tale felony, yes, who are you, suspect B? I imagine we shall see. Now, let us forsake this hypothetical, theoretical debate. For in all actuality, I really suspect suspect C, who appears as if she has had a very bad day of late. In fact, I see it very clearly. Her head in a daze for guilt lays a treacherous maze in its dark ways. In fact, if I had to guess, I'd blame no one less than you, Miss Suspect C.
What kind of a monster would accuse a mother of killing her own son?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Tale of these things happen, you know. My condolences for your loss. Fairy Tale and I were the closest of friends, and it really is always the best to die young. But have no doubt, for I will root out the culprit here and avenge our dear Fairy Tale fantasy. I'll have to take heed in pursuing that lead. If I wouldn't put it past the old bastard of a mother, she may look the innocent type, but don't believe the hype. You can never trust the trustworthy, for their hands always end up being found dirty. But nevertheless, I feel I found a chest buried deep in the heart of this mystery. And it's a chest called jealousy. A very old one indeed. In fact, I see it very clearly. Imagine an old willow tree peeking from beneath his pillow, which he climbed down the branches up and into his dreams, where nothing was as it seemed, and all she fueled was her own jealousy. Do you see the picture I see of a world where lilies dance without their petals and roses held sway in toils and troubles of a higher kind than we seek today, yet on a lower plane that we found yesterday? The lilies once wore their blamelessly vines out in the open, where they taint young minds, leading them astray with thoughts of love that turned to lust. For gone so long, they turn to dust, which if we look closely, we can find in the eye of our young mankind, who I've heard was quite guilty of lying in bed all day, choosing to die inside his own mind instead of with these suspicious suspects. But of course, the thing that hurts the most was the smiling lies we're often seen in our own mind's eye, smiling lies of the only pierced kind, formed with the pierced intentions. If, of course, you forget to mention those damn lilies, petalous lips, and their pouting purple lips that just had a way of sucking you, and didn't they? So you blamed it on the dust in your eyes, which apparently made you blind to the obvious light that's shown in her smile. Every time you asked to stay just a little while in Fairy Tale, we all know you drove your own hearse here today and cast your own curse in that dirty kind of way. The moment you asked space and time to leave the room so you could forget reality and be that one time kind of groom to a petalous lily that I'm sure presented quite a beautiful scene that soon became a beautiful wall in between you and me, Fairy Tale, and our once upon a time Fairy Tale fantasy. And fine, I admit it, it was all quite sad to see, it made me just so mad to be on the outside looking in instead of inside with him that I couldn't breathe or see or be anything else but a murderer. Get your hands off me! I may have used a knife, but the wound was bleeding long before I ever heard this strike. Suspect A, denying him his advances, slaying him of his chances. Are you suspect B? Talk about fate, I suppose nothing more than another blind date. What about you, dear old suspect C? What kind of a mother could you possibly be? It was only I who took the time to climb down the willow tree to attend her screams to see and you could be. It was only I, only.
The end.